Hello there. Welcome to the B&B show. My name is Brandon. This over here to my left here, that's Brendan. That's Seahawks. Brendan Nelson back in the house here at the Hawks Nest as we're about to do a little bit of a previewing of the final preseason game, hopefully right before a great season about to come up. But Brendan, how you doing tonight, man? How you feeling?
Things are going well, I'd say. I'm pretty happy with pretty much all things Seahawks related at the moment.
It does feel like fairly calm waters, and we've got done a few things that are a little worrisome, but nothing that's major. I think even with the Adams news coming back and him being activated, we talked about already a couple days ago, but everything for the most part is kind of positive news on most fronts, and all of these guys are going to be returning to the ranks. So there's not been a lot really going on recently in Seahawks land, and we're going to jump into really quick into this Packers matchup here, but there is a little bit of two bits of pieces of news as it relates to our division, teams that we play twice a year. And it is always a smart to be looking at what's going on in your division. You got to get through that before you get through anybody else, before you hopefully get to a Super Bowl. And one thing that has stood out here in the offseason, I think for both me and Brendan here, has been the way that the division has weakened up a little bit over time, and certainly at the bottom two teams. And now that grows ever more now with the Arizona Cardinals, Brendan, firmly with 100% certainty, screaming from the top of their lungs off the top of the rooftops, we are tanking. So convince me otherwise.
I think that would be pretty hard to do. I think it's pretty clear that their priorities right now are not winning games. I would say, though, I don't know if I agree with the way in which they're going about it, but very clearly, this is a team that is doing everything they can to assemble as much draft capital as possible going into next season. Again, I'm not crazy about how they're doing it, but it is certainly happening.
Yeah, you've got Josh Jones, I believe a third round pick out of Texas, a guy I think we were one of the original guys we had talked about, I think back in prospect times. I can't remember, it was a while back, but a guy
That
like
was
that.
that was before we started
Was that?
streaming together. That
It was
was
right
the
on.
2020 draft. That was the COVID draft when everybody was zooming in.
Oh, that's right. I did like him coming out, and I thought he's played solid with the Cardinals. I guess they think they've got three tackles now, taking the kid in the first round like they did. So they're saying, well, we got to move on one, but they didn't get maximum value for him, and he's a pretty good player. And he's had a good preseason
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah, I was trying to figure that one out. I was looking at it. He played really well last year at left tackle. He played terrible on the right side the year before, though.
Mhm.
But to me, the move is very clearly to trade DJ Humphries, who is about to turn 30, is already on a big contract. Like, isn't that the move? If you're blowing it up to this degree and you know you're not going to be good for at least a couple years, why would you get rid of the guy who hasn't even turned 26 yet and keep the guy who is already 30? That doesn't that I don't like that as a general strategy.
Especially when you got Josh on the third round contract. I mean, maybe he only has another year plus of club control, but he has at least another year in addition to this one, I would believe. And you don't usually want to give up young, good, cheap linemen that can play the blind side. But this is why we kind of land on the spot of saying this looks more tanky than anything else, because you're just not going to do this kind of move if you're trying to be competitive, and especially with that offensive line, which has not exactly been a paradigm of pass protection in recent years, Brendan. So I that was an odd one to me. The other odd one was the Simmons one. They moved a kid that they took middle of the first round, I believe, a
But
couple of
even
years ago.
eighth overall.
Eighth overall. Oh my God, they took him so high. A guy that you had to select who was a positionless guy at college. You know, they moved him all over the place at Clemson, and you had to know how to use him. You had to know how to have a plan there. Is this them just salvaging him? Is he bad, or did they just mismanage their plan with him and not actually have an operational plan when it came to Simmons on how to use him best?
Honestly, last year, I don't think he played that bad. I mean, he's not really good. You wish he was a lot better for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's bad. I don't know how what he's done over the last 2 years, plus his age, plus the contract he's on, equates to seventh round pick. I have no idea how that works. Like, seventh round pick is John Reed. Remember when we traded a seventh round pick to get John
Yeah.
Reed and then cut him? Like, that's a seventh round pick player. Isaiah Simmons, I know he's disappointing. I know you could even call him a little bit of a bust, but he is nowhere near the kind of player that I think is worth a 7th round pick.
Yeah, and I obviously don't, I watch the Cards as much as I can stand to watch them as far as prepping for games when we have to play them, but I haven't obviously been locked in on Simmons through the years a lot. He's made some flashy plays. There's a spot, remember, on Russ a couple of years ago where he picked off Russ on a play where he just kind of fooled Russ, turned his back on the play as the ball's in the air, got his head back around, made the pick. I feel like the Cardinals did more of trying to structure him in a box and play more of a traditional linebacker role than moving him all over the place like they should have done. And that's where a lot of, to me, the failure comes in, on top of the fact he had no help up front on that defensive line. So, it's hard to be what linebacker is going to excel. I mean, they got that Zaven Collins kid they took the year after him, and he's not been all that good either.
Right.
It's just tough when you don't have any help up front, when it's that devoid of talent like the Cardinals line is, and their rebuild is that much more harder now. One less guy that could have been still a somewhat of a foundational piece, gone for nothing. 7th round pick.
I mean, I don't mind trading him, but I don't know why you would trade him and not Buda Baker, who is actually getting up there in years, who is actually on a monster contract that is just going to slow down your rebuild, and who definitely has some value. So I don't know why. I mean, maybe they're going to move Buda Baker in the next few days. That's possible.
I was going to say, and if not in a few days, maybe by the trade deadline, that becomes a guy that becomes more. I thought this about Aaron Donald too with this year, where Aaron Donald could go out and still be balling. Rams suck. They get to the trade deadline and they can talk some team into giving them a decent haul for a Donald with a big contract, and who's later up in his years. How much longer does he want to play? And that's where the trade deadline could be a little more active this year, Brendan. But the thing that's scary about this move too, on the flip side of this, is he now goes to the Giants. And when you talk about having a defensive coordinator out in this league who can take a guy and creatively use him all over the place and make it hard for teams to figure out what you're going to do with this guy, and that's Wink Martindale out there with New York. And I think this is a hell of a chess piece to offer him on the defensive side of the ball. And if anybody can reclamate it for a 7th round pick, I love this move for the Giants on what they're doing. I mean, this is to me a great deal, for them.
They got him for free. Even if they cut him tomorrow, it's really not that big of a deal.
It really isn't. Not for first look, not for first access. For a player that Wink Martindale needs in his defense, he wants to move guys like an amoeba all over the place and send from this direction and be able to drop back in that direction. And if you drop back, I need you to be able to cover and be actually good in that part of things. So he gets that guy to do it. I wouldn't be surprised if he is able to take this kid up another notch, because the Cardinals just seem so uncreative in their approach. They were so of an offensive driven team too, and just their defense. It's all about spread it out and peppering the ball all over the football field. I was seeing in the chat, was there a third move that I didn't see? As I was kind of
yes, they traded for a quarterback. They basically took the Josh Jones pick and traded it for Josh Dobbs.
Oh my God.
And I guess Josh Dobbs is going to start for them, honestly.
Boy, dude, that's bad organizations are bad for a reason. I guess that's about all I got to say on that one, Brendan. Just like, what are you doing? If you're collecting picks, then collect picks. Don't go in for this year. I mean, just be bad this year. Then you're leaning into it, so lean into it. And Josh Dobbs.
Yeah, maybe they just felt like Clayton Tune is so bad we're not even going to be able to evaluate our other players. So let's get at least somebody who's competent.
Could be that. There's some intelligence behind that. I'd
rather just offer Carson Wentz the veteran minimum than do that, though.
I kind of would too, and just keep the picks. I mean, to me, this is the thing I like about what the Cardinals doing here, Brendan, is they're leaning into the rebuild all the way, and they're doing I'm not a full big fan of tank mode, but lean into your rebuild. Like if we're in a rebuild year, then we're not going for it. You mentioned about Buda Baker, it makes sense. Or DJ Humphries, like offload assets that are not part of your future, and get what you can get for them now. And this is going to help to slingshot you, like they do in the movies with the spaceship. Slingshot him around the moon, that slingshot you back around, like it did with us when you do that. And it's I think they're taking mostly good steps on this. We'll see if they have the right coaching staff there, Brendan. But here's the one undeniable part as you push it forward for our Seahawks that's maybe the most important above all else. This division is ours for the taking right now. There is truly 4 reasonably easy wins in there potentially. I'm not saying we don't take them light, and I'm not gonna be just as nervous on those game days as any other days. But the Cardinals now are not even a shell of what they were when you beat them twice last year. There is no more Watt. There is no more Allen. There is no more Simmons. There's no Jones, or there's no Justin Pugh. They are definitely in that mode of just bones you're going at every week. And this is going to be beneficial. I know people don't like it because some people, I think, love the competitiveness, Brendan, of having 4 teams in a division that are all dogs and fighting it out. And it's just, that's fun to a degree, but you can kind of beat yourself up. And there's something nice if you want to have aspirations to go in further and farther in a season, to being able to kind of have a few weeks you can rest guys a little bit extra time, because you don't have to, like week 1. We're going to get the benefits of this in week 1 right out the gate with the Rams team. You can't convince me, Brendan, that Carroll doesn't look at that Rams team and his view of the injury situation and whether to rest or start guys versus if it was the Niners later on in the season and that view. Does that make sense? Did I word that too weird?
Oh, no, I think you're correct there. I think that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's good for us, man, is it not?
I don't see how it could possibly be bad. Although I don't know, maybe the Rams feel like they're not tanking because apparently they're in on the Jonathan Taylor stuff. I don't know if they're just messing around, but apparently they are one of the teams that has at least made an offer. I don't know where I guess they really hate first round draft picks. I don't know.
Maybe that's just it. They're just like, it's a financial suck. And then we got to admit, McVay's had some sort of weird, hateful view of Akers almost to some degree. It seems like he's like just begrudgingly come around to like, okay, you're our back. Yeah, I don't know why, too. The kid runs pretty hard from when I've watched him. He's played good against us. He balled out in that playoff game against us at home a couple of years ago. But McVay just has a bone to him. That would be a weird trade for them to make, Brennan. God, that'd be strange. I hope they do. I hope they make a first round pick for Jonathan Taylor. Please go do that, Rams. I'd have no issue taking that risk. Worked out so well for you with Gurley, with paying him. So why not go back down that road again? Another team out there, unfortunately, having some dysfunction within our own division here, Brendan, which is, I don't know about you, but I feel like the Joker in Batman. I have one of those big smiles on my faces when I get to see this news. And I know it's wrong of me to do. I'm a bad man for doing it, Brendan, but I couldn't help myself but go to these YouTube channels at times and check out some of the reactions of the Niner fans yesterday as we got reports that not only is Trey Lance going to slide down to the 3rd string unit, but indeed as well, and this is the unconfirmed, did he not? It seems like he kind of quasi did ask for a trade in addition to that, or at least, softly requested. It's a soft trade request,
Yeah. Did you see the Grant Cohn theory?
No. What was his theory?
Yeah. Well, I guess Darnold and Trey Lance both have the same agent. And initially, Kyle Shanahan came out and said, oh, we're going to keep all 3 guys. I'm not going to say which one's the backup. Some weeks it'll be Darnold. Some weeks it'll be Lance. I'll just change who my backup is every week. And the theory was that the agent contacted Shanahan and was like, no, you pick one and you let the other one go. I swear to God, you are not humiliating my players like that. No. And then Shanahan was like, okay, I picked Darnold. And then the agent was like, well, then trade Lance. Do it. And it seems like that's where this is headed. Yeah. It
really does. And when he has those quotes like you just referenced, I think it's probably pretty accurate to that's what's going on in the situation. And I've got no love for agents, Brendan, but I can't blame the agent in this situation pushing this in this way. Lance has not, in my opinion, been given the greatest of fairest of shakes by that Niner organization. And much like the Cardinals with Simmons and not having a plan for him, the 49ers likewise didn't have much of a plan for Lance from the moment he walked in the door. And I don't know if they were not just all on the same page and Shanahan got it forced on him. It feels like that a little bit.
Yeah.
But Shanahan's also got this weird, it's like a tick, Brendan, when it comes to this quarterback thing. I mean, think about just how you reference that with him. We're going to change our backups week to week based on the matchup. And Darnold's not a statue. They're probably a lot closer in their mobility than they're further apart. What? What?
Some people have theorized that Shanahan thinks about football like it's being played on spreadsheets a little too much, maybe.
It feels like that a bit, I'll tell you that.
Like he thinks this is Madden and the players don't have personalities and are just going to do whatever he tells them to do. And I don't know. Maybe there's something to it. I've always been a big fan of Shanahan. I still think he's a great coach, but this is. It seems like he just wants a quarterback who will do what he's told all the time, and that's it.
It does indeed. And I think like you, he is a really good quarterback, but then I do come back to, but this does seem to be the very glaring, obvious Achilles heel that's always exposed. You can always kind of see sitting there at some point or another. He just can't seem to get away from it for whatever reason. The term "get out of your own way" when it comes to this a little bit. He's really smart. He's a really good head coach, but this one thing here is just. And as I wondered about this offseason, and I still wonder now, and if you feel yourself as still firm in this place, that the quarterback situation could end up being the undoing of this Niner team this year. Not saying I'm changing my prediction on them for the season, Brendan, but that when you look at things that could undo them, this quarterback position looks clearer and clearer as a potential place of doing that.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if there was a right answer here. I don't don't believe in Brock Purdy. I don't think he's that good. Darnold is. I don't think anybody is out there thinking Darnold's good. He's capable of being decent, and Trey Lance just doesn't fit the offense. So you put that all together, and there is no right answer. But you had to make an answer, so I guess they did. But it's very weird that this happened, and nobody's going to get held accountable. They're going to spend 3 first-round picks on a guy, 3 pretty good first-round picks, by the way. On a guy who they're about to trade for like a 6th round pick, probably.
Very much so. And they're going to get out of it unscathed, it seems like, from a firing standpoint, because of the fact that they have been winning, and they'll probably win this year. But like the Cardinals, I think just the bottom line on this, Brendan, with this situation is that if they do end up doing what's likely to happen, which is a trade is to occur, and I can't blame the Niners for trying to pull off the 3, because like Shanahan referenced, we needed 4 last year. So like you said, he's thinking that spreadsheet of like, we just need numbers, just need lab bodies. It's like, it doesn't matter who. But if they move him now, they are down to 2 quarterbacks. You have Brock Purdy, who's not grown 4 inches and gained 30 pounds over the offseason. He still remains a pretty, I'm not going to say frail. Okay. Well, I won't use the words frail here, Brendan, but I mean, he's a little thinly, he's wiry, I guess. And Darnold, the guy that, doesn't have the greatest of track records. They don't have a Lance. They don't have to me, makes me more confident in taking this division, because you don't have that unknown X, right? The guy who's really talented that you don't know if maybe the light does suddenly now go on when he's given this chance, when things kind of just all align correctly for him.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, so some good stuff happened, at least for our guys in the division here, all the way around with every team. Everything looking pretty good for our Hawks to set up and potentially make some noise just within this division. We'll see if they can do what they can do with the rest of the schedule. But always like seeing the division foes. I know the Niners aren't doing this, but at least somewhat show their belly here a little early on. The Cardinals are absolutely signaling. It's almost like what do they do? Those mass pink slip days? What do they call those in the corporate world, Brendan?
Like a Black Friday or
yeah. Like a Black Friday or something like that. They got some, I'm sure, new fancy term for it now, but it's like that right now in the Cardinals organization. Everyone's in the line of fire.
Yeah, and I do think they're not done, for whatever that's worth. I really do think there's a couple more moves coming.
It is, especially with Budda Baker requesting a trade. I mean, if you're moving guys that haven't even requested a trade and you're doing that in mass, why wouldn't you, as you said, move that guy? And I'm sure there's probably the dead money hit on that a little bit, is why they don't want to do it, because they're probably going to have to eat a little bit of that to make that happen. And I don't think they're going to get much for him either when they move him. So they're probably a little bit, let's just try to make it work with him. Taker 610, thank you for the $2 donation. Says trade DeLance. Indeed.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying he's going to Minnesota, which
that was the place I thought would be the best.
I kind of like that.
I like it a lot. Minnesota seems to be silently intent on moving off of Cousins after this year. They had put themselves in bed with that contract and then had to structure it to a 2-year deal last year. And that was going to put them on so much money they couldn't get out from the deal in either season. But it does seem like they want to try to maybe go for something with a little bit higher end of it. And Lance going there, he's from North Dakota, not too far away, right? North Dakota State or something where he was playing at. So.
Yeah, it's basically his home team, basically.
Yeah, I love the move for Minnesota to go out there and do it. I think it'd be very smart with them. They've got an older quarterback this year in Cousins, and Lance should like that because that gives him an opportunity to go there and slide right in. So love that as a landing spot for him. And I still like Lance a lot. I'm not saying he hasn't not taken the job by the horns, but it's hard to take the job by the horns when you've got people saying, we're trying to win a Super Bowl here. You need to get together. You need to, it's like, I think you almost end up trying to probably play a little too perfect at times when you're in that kind of environment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Taker 610. It also does, by the way, we got to give Wilson some props on this for being a guy coming in as a rookie, having to probably get a lot of that. Yet still finding those ballsy moments to make those throws deep down the field,
I mean, the difference is Trey Lance was 20 when he got drafted, right?
True.
And Wilson was 24. A lot more reasonable to ask it of a player who had played a lot. Trey Lance, he hadn't even played football in like the 2 years prior to getting drafted or something.
Yeah, it's true.
Something like that.
It was a good whole year of it, at least where he's off with the one game and they just shut the whole thing down because of the vid thing. But
right.
Yeah, give him some time. I'm still wouldn't be surprised this guy eventually does find his footing. Not saying he's going to be a star, but that maybe he can be a good quarterback in this league. Just sometimes it's about the situation, man. Even when you're on a stacked team like the Niners, it's, do I have the right coach? Do I have the right environment, right personality for the right environment? All those mixes. Taker with another $2 donation. Thank you, Taker. Appreciate the double donos. Says, did Lance have a rich type hype or what? 3 firsts? No, I don't think that he was viewed as Anthony Richardson coming out, was he?
No, but that's what the Niners had to give up to get up from where they were to where they needed to go. They were at 12 and they needed to get up to 3. So that's the price when there are quarterbacks up there. If there aren't quarterbacks up there, we kind of see, or a super duper blue chipper like Will Anderson, I think we kind of see that trade ups are starting to become less expensive. But if you're trading up to the top 3 to get a quarterback or a super duper blue chipper, that's just kind of the going rate. So, I mean, obviously the Niners should have just sat where they were and taken Mac Jones, which I'm sure is what Shanahan wanted to do. But they didn't, and now here we are.
Yeah, it's certainly one too. You wonder if, like, who else was competing to move up to that spot to go get Lance, considering that Fields then fell all the way to, I think, like 10. And so
I think he went 11th.
Yeah. And so, like, why were you guys pushed to do that? Because it was the Dolphins in that spot. Dolphins weren't they had 2 of the previous year they just taken, so they weren't going to pick him. But no, he didn't. Anthony Richardson's a 99 percentile athlete for the position, and Lance is a very good athlete. But A-Rod is all the way around. Like, Lance has good arm strength. A-Rod has probably like close to special arm strength.
Wouldn't it be A-Rich?
A-Rich, sorry. I keep going A-Rod. Yeah, Anthony Richardson. Sorry, I'm mispronouncing that. But there's definitely a difference between those two and the level. Both rough coming out, both really young coming out. Both got a full skill set that they bring to the table. But Richardson's he's kind of a different style of cat as far as how he's put together.
Yeah. They do have some similarities, admittedly, but the thing to understand is that Lance produced massively in his college career. Richardson really didn't. But Lance played against terrible competition. A-Rich was playing against the best competition. So maybe it evens out. I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah. Either way, Richard's still the little bit of the better one, but Lance has got some value and he's got some ability. It's just is what it has been down there in that situation. And I mean, last year plays his first game in a monsoon, and then second game comes back, and on like the first drive, he's been running quarterback power runs up the middle. And that's just, he wasn't set up for success there. He just really wasn't. And boy, it's going to be interesting to see if they end up flipping him for a 6th round pick. There will be some heat for that. Can't blame him for not being willing to. He does the trade request, and they don't just jump to accommodate him, Brendan, because you know that the second that they do that, it's going to be a wave of media reports across the nation giving him a ton of heat for doing it. Like, how could he do this?
Well, they're not going to get anything, and I think they're hoping maybe they do, which is why it hasn't happened yet. But they're getting like a 6th round pick, and they're going to like it.
Yeah, I can't blame him for holding them. If I was him with last year and what I dealt with, I'd try to hold on to him as long as I could too. I mean, there's no benefit to them by moving. Like I was thinking initially, Brendan, that if they move Lance, then they free up the 1st round money. But the way they structured his contract was all really heavily bonus based. So he's like on like a $1 million, $1.5 million base salary. Like, if we trade for him, like $3 million would be his cap hit this year. So they don't even get that kind of relief on it by moving him, where I was thinking maybe this could be pushed if he has like a $7, $8, $9 million hit to where now you have the money to go get Bosa paid. But that's the other part of this is Bosa still remains holding out. Bosa, you don't go short, buddy. You make them pay
Mhm.
you. You make them pay you. You
I'm sure
earn
he
it.
will.
Defensive Player of the Year. That's 35
Mhm.
million a year, Brendan. That's the going rate. Taker, thank you for that. Don't know, brother. Appreciate you. Jordan with the $2 donation says, can we call Kyle Shanahan the anti-quarterback whisperer? I think it's pretty fair. I mean, he's had some
Well,
success.
okay. I think it's like John Gruden, because John Gruden was the guy back in the day who couldn't develop talent, but
Mm,
could take talent that was already developed and get great things out of it.
good point.
Like when he was at Tampa Bay after they won the Super Bowl with a bunch of players that he did not develop, that was Dungy's team, and Brad Johnson was already an established good quarterback by that point. And then after that, they remember Chris Sims. I think they drafted Chris Sims in the 3rd round, and that was a complete disaster. He didn't do anything. I think he almost died on the football field at one point, actually. Not that,
Spleen.
not that that had anything to do with him busting, but
No.
still. And then he got Jeff Garcia. He's like, okay, I need to go get somebody who I know is already good and already knows this stuff and will just run my offense. And it actually worked quite well. Jeff Garcia was good for them. I remember before Chris Sims, they got Brian Greasy, and Brian Greasy was good for them. So whenever John Gruden got guys who were already established as good and didn't need to be ramped up, it was great. But whenever he tried to develop his own guys, it went badly. So maybe Kyle's kind of like that with quarterbacks. Maybe that's why the Kirk Cousins thing makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm. It does. And I see it definitely going down to probably being a likelihood that he ends up reconnecting with him. To your point on that, you also had with Gruden when he was at the Raiders, Rich Gannon. That's how he got to that Super Bowl. It wasn't on the back of with the Raiders when they lost in that one to Tampa Bay. He wasn't doing that. It was Gannon with a grade A quarterback. He was doing the guy that had been a backup for many, many years and then slowly slid into being the starter. And he, like to your point, had a guy that could run the position the way he wanted to, like a coach on the field, basically.
Well, Gruden wasn't in Oakland when the Raiders made that Super Bowl. He had already, that was the year after he had left to Tampa.
No, I think he went to Super Bowl that year, didn't he?
Yeah, but he played against Gruden in the Super Bowl.
So Gruden went to Tampa Bay, but Gruden was in the Super Bowl for the Raiders. He was the Raiders head coach.
No, that was Bill Callahan.
Was it Bill?
Yeah, it was Bill
Am I off?
Callahan, and Gruden was coaching against.
He was the
former
coach.
team.
You're right. I'm getting it turned around. My bad. I'm having a brain fart moment. So sorry, my bad. Yeah, that's right. That's right. But still, he did have Gannon as the guy basically that was his signal caller through his time. There was Gannon, that he wasn't looking. They never looked with Roken to go get that quarterback that would be the stud. They just kind of went with it. But I think you're maybe right. I do think that's maybe where this is at with him, and that he's just that guy that I'd be looking to get a veteran with him. If it's not Cousins, Brendan, then it is a guy that you look to go get that's a more of one of these veteran quarterbacks that eventually ends up on the market, and let him work with one of those guys, because he just does not seem to do well with the young cats. He did okay with Cousins, I guess, with the Washington, but aside from that, there's kind of a trail of tears with what you have as far as the rest goes.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who else it could be. Like we know Brady's going to get some phone calls this year, but I'm sure by next year that's probably going to be. I mean, we already know he tried to call up Phillip Rivers, right? He already said that.
They did say they were going to have Rivers be their quarterback, and that may still be a call that they end up making especially if they end up moving Lance. I mean, that's definitely a possibility that starts to raise its head now back into play on it. I think Brady potentially is a call that they could end up making if it got weird, where they just mortgage the hell out of it. They're going to have to give Tampa something, because Tampa's sitting on $20-30 million of dead money with Brady this year. So they're going to have Tampa a little bit of juice to do that. But you're right. Other than that, who's the guy you're going to go get that's that veteran, certain guy out there that's likely to be on the market after this season? And
if things don't go well in Detroit, maybe Jared Goff.
Goff's a possibility. They haven't done anything to really set anybody behind him or get somebody set up for it behind him. But you're right. We'll see if that is definitely a guy that maybe could make some sense for him. I could see that. And they have maybe some familiarity with it at that point with Goff. That'd be about it. That would be about it, though, man. That's
what if Wilson gets cut? Would he do that, or is that would he still kind of feel like, well, he can't run my offense, so even though he's a veteran, who cares?
I think they would have to get pretty. The only thing that would drive them to Wilson with that, because like you just said, I don't think Wilson could execute Kyle's offense. I mean, if he's got problems with certain guys that aren't playing to what I tell you to do, you'd certainly have that issue with Russ. But the only way they would do that with that, and you've seen teams do this. I know this seems silly to me to say this, Brendan, but tell me you've not seen this, where it's like teams have a guy that just kills them for years. And then they end up, when that guy becomes available, bringing them onto the team as if they'll be able to squeeze some of that out, onto their team and help them out a little bit with his energy he brings. And I could maybe see, but they'd have to be getting desperate where they just don't have a trade they can make. Cousins is out. There's not anybody else on the market. And what Russell will have to be somewhat decent this year too, Brendan. And that's the part that, we'll have to see if he, there was a lot of national guys bending over backwards to say how great Russ played in the last game. And so it's, maybe he can get a little bit more back into it a little bit, I guess, with Russ, and that would help him. But I don't, that seems, your point on him not being able to execute the offense is an appropriate one. I just don't see who he could do that with. So I don't think there's a lot of other quarterbacks. You go to the league, guys are pretty set in. It's either young guys on rookie deals or the guys all got paid like your Lamar Jackson types. There's really not a guy that's going to be flexing back up on the market at this point. Maybe Mac Jones, man. Maybe Mac Jones eventually gets his man eventually on that one,
Yeah. Yeah, okay. That's not bad.
I don't know if I'd have I'd be worried for our defenders at that point, Brendan, because Mac likes to, he's a little dirty. He's a little dirty with those ankle grabs. He whips out some of that jiu-jitsu. If you intercept him, he's gonna put you into a Kimura.
And he's gonna throw a lot of interceptions, so
that's what I'm saying, man. That's what I'm saying. We already have some defenders that get injured pretty easily, and then you put that guy out there, and I'm not worried about you throwing touchdowns. I'm worried about you snapping ligaments. But thank you, Jordan. I think anti-quarterback whisperer is a lot closer at this point to the inverse of that when it comes to Shanahan right now with the current track record. Leland Kimball, thank you for being a member of the Hawks Nest for 11 long months. I hope you're doing good out there, Leland. It's good to see you in the chat. It says one weekend at home to see one and only one game. I'll be back in January to hopefully see our boys in the Super Bowl. Let's go, Leland. Let's go. And sorry you're missing out on the season a little bit for what you got going through. But hopefully, you get back in time. It's for the big game. It's for the right time. And Hawks are going to reward us for it's been a great offseason. It looks like a really, really nice team this upcoming year as far as how they got things put together.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Appreciate you, though.
There's a chance that it happens.
I do as well, man. I do as well. Hope you're doing good out there, Leland. All right, let's put this forward a little bit. We're here now. Let's get this into looking a little bit at this upcoming game, and it's a little bit of a tough evaluation for me and Brendan to do these kind of previews for this final preseason game. The fourth preseason game used to be just one where you saw guys that you would not even be in the NFL for a lot of the game. It's changed in recent years a little bit now because you have 3 games instead of 4. So the 3 kind of starts to take on some of the flavor of what used to be the 4th game. But then at the same time, there's also, because you don't have as many games, somewhat of a draw with certain players in certain positions to then play them and give them a little bit more time out there in this kind of given game than you normally would. Based on when Carroll's keeping his cards close to the vest, he's not letting us know what's going on. It doesn't seem like with who's really going to play other than the guys you would know would obviously play. Levi Bell's going to play a lot. Okay, yeah, we know, But who do you think that they're going to probably try to go out here with this? If we're talking about guys that are really on this roster to go and maybe push up the depth chart, maybe not if starters, but are we going to see Mike Jackson this game? Are we going to see Lucas and Cross, do you think, out there, or do you see him being pretty conservative with this?
It sounds like Gino's going to play a little bit. So if you got to put Gino out there, you got to put the starting offensive line out there.
I don't want Stone out there, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, so I guess we are going to get a little bit of that. But Gino would be working with all the backup receivers, I would think, unless you want to put Metcalf out there for a little bit or Lockett out there for a little bit, because obviously JSN's out. And Derek is still out. He's not going to be able to play. So I mean, I guess you put him out there for a couple drives just because, but I think that the thing that I'm really looking for on the offense actually would be Forsythe and Island, because I think those 2 guys are kind of fighting for their roster lives. From different perspectives. Forsythe probably felt like he was good to go, and then the preseason started and he was playing real bad. Now I feel like we might just go, you know what, we'd rather keep another defensive lineman, or we'd rather keep another cornerback than keep this guy because what's the difference between him and anybody else if he has another really bad game. And Greg Island's kind of a guy who I think might finally make that jump from a guy who makes the practice squad every year to a guy who makes the active roster as a backup offensive lineman. He seems to have played all right so far through the first 2 preseason games. So that's kind of what I'm looking for, because I feel like everything else is pretty much locked up. Like, I don't know who else can get a starting job or lose a starting job or lose a roster spot. Like, I mean, Jake Bobo might not even play because we need him now, and he's already proven himself. I'm not worried about Bobo. Not worried about any of the running backs, really. Not worried about anybody. Like, obviously, we can't even think about Derek Young because he's not playing because he's hurt. Maybe it'd be nice to see a little Matt Landers, too. I guess you could throw him in there. But offensively, I'm actually really focusing on the backup offensive line to see who wants to make this team.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think those guys, Curhan, another guy to throw in that mix. He's drawn at this point. I'm feeling more confident than him from Stone, where Stone just hasn't taken any real steps forward in his performance level, and especially when you see him playing left tackle, which is his position. I'm expecting him in pass protection, especially, to flourish. I understand if he's not going to push guys off the ball, but struggling in pass protection as he has in addition to that has been very disconcerting. It would be good to see if we can see Anthony Bradford go from the real pores opening step to a little bit better in game 2, still not good, but then maybe we see this young kid start to, in what may be his last action for a while for us being able to get to see him, have him come a little bit more forward. And if you're just looking for a guy that's just going to be fun to watch, he might not lay his block, he might lay his block, but he's going to try to do it with a sense of physicality and nastiness to it that makes it fun when you watch him going out there trying to do his business. So it's not technically correct all the times, but he sometimes just is just fun to watch him go out there and hammer guys. I think the practice squad running back position, I think they do probably end up going with both the Kobach and Sadrodrick.
They released Kobach. I think he's hurt. I think we're going to hope he gets through to waivers, and then we can IR him. I think he's hurt. That's the only thing that makes sense.
Man, must have been a bad injury. I was having some hopes for him. So the practice squad, legacy of Sadrodrick Thompson, is alive and well. I guess he's gonna be our guy.
I mean, I think we could have put both on the practice squad anyway, but yeah, Thompson's making it now, and Thompson's played good, so I got no issue with that for sure.
No, I like how he looked in his action, and certainly when you go to your 5th running back, you're rarely going to get a guy that's ultra talented. And seems like with these running backs in the market in this day and age, Brendan, you can always go find one, even if they're pretty good. Nobody really truly values them very, very much. Landers, I think, will be a guy to keep an eye on here. That's the guy that's been out with an injury. He is going to get back and get some run in this game. How about that tight end? I had some of my subs talking about him. I don't know if you're having the same.
Oh, the XFL guy, the XFL
guy. Yeah, the real twitchy, real explosive, fast.
Yeah, he is good, and we would need somebody like that if we really do move Noah Fant. And I'm still not convinced that we do. I feel like we now feel like we need him because of the JSN stuff. But if you feel really good about JSN getting back early in the season, and you feel really good about your 3 wide receiver sets, then suddenly Noah Fant becomes a little more available. But you would need that 3rd tight end, and Tyler Mabry I don't think he's good enough.
Yeah, and Gendorf, of course, was released last week or so. So you do have to have one of those guys to emerge in that fashion. But I think, like you said, you're going into this upcoming year, and even if it's just the first 6 weeks to get through and weather that storm a little bit with the injury situation, you're going to lean back, I think, into the 2 and the 3 tight end sets quite a bit at that point, being that even last year, that was what you leaned into a lot, as much as anybody in the league, in running those kind of formational groupings. And that's going to require having the healthy guys to get it done. So yeah, it does. That will be the one guy I'll try to look a little bit more closer at, though, Brendan, when he is in the game. And I think fans should too, because that could be a guy, if he did flash, did pop, did look good coming off his routes, look good blocking, that maybe that drives that choice a little bit further down the line. You're right with the offense. There's not a lot that needs to be determined there. We go to the defense here. What is nice, I think, about this with the Packers is this is a pretty still well-run organization. They still have pretty good depth. They're going to give you a good challenge throughout this, where you're not just running through a paper mache of third stringers. But I do think that the Mike Jackson, Trey Brown competition is one to keep an eye on in this game. And Jackson having the struggles he did, and Brown coming forward like he did.
Well, I think the thing to keep in mind here with the Packers is they lost half of a preseason game.
Mm.
Because last week they played like the first half in 5 minutes and then they called the game. So they need, and that's a team that kind of needed the preseason maybe more than the average team because they're working this new quarterback in. So I kind of feel like that they're going to play a little bit more than the average team would have because of that circumstance. So we should get a pretty decent look at, of course, we know Jordan Love, but their starting offensive line, Christian Watson, Aaron Jones, and AJ Dillon. Yeah, that's the other guy, AJ Dillon.
That's right.
So I think we're going to see a pretty good look at all that. And we're also going to see a pretty good look at their better depth players that they need to get a look at before cut down day because of that situation. So that's actually kind of an interesting angle.
Yeah, it'll be a nice challenge. There's no doubt. I think at times in this game, Brendan, you'll probably have 1s versus 2s and 2s versus 3s as far as how the Packers run it in light of the circumstances you talk about, where they had the guy almost, paralyzed on the field. He turned out okay, right? He got his fingers and extremities.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to play football again anytime soon, but he's alive. Yeah.
Yeah, live and at least moving the toes and the fingers is what you're hoping. Got to get the legs back into it. It'll be a good challenge though for our Hawks on that. And I think defensive side of the ball, the Trey Mike Jackson matchup's the one that's at the forefront to me. Jackson seemingly has had a really good off season leading up to this point, but last week's game maybe did allow things to be a little bit more opened up in this. But I think Carroll was talking today in his press conference about the fact it's a battle. It's going down to the wire. He was not willing to necessarily assert it to being one or the other. And I went back and watched the tape on Trey Brown, Brennan. He was really impressive in that game and on a variety of plays, not just merely the interception where he undercut the route, which was definitely pretty impressive in itself.
Yeah, he had some really nice tackles. I think he came up in run support a couple times and did good.
In short, too, not where he's catching the receiver 7-8 yards down the field, but he's actually rallying up fast and then making the tackle right at the line of scrimmage in a couple of different circumstances. And that was the part he struggled in week 1 was the tackling. And at his size, that's the part you worry about when you look at him. Is he going to be able to do that? We need a guy who can tackle out here. Can't have you be this kind of empty hole out there in that respect. I think the linebackers will be an interesting part to take a look at here. Brendan, luck, we've got Jordan Brooks, who seemingly is having no setbacks from his return, practicing now, looking, seemingly in pretty good shape for where he is. Fun stat I saw earlier today, by the way, Brendan, he's one of 5 defenders that's multiple times over the last 3 years gotten up over 20 miles an hour on the speed on the football field. So man is definitely very, very fast. But we've got also Bush seemingly doing pretty good from his standpoint. Bobby's here. So the linebacker position, we're feeling better about this. Glad we don't have to call upon these guys. From my standpoint, I've not been, some have with Radigan been a little more impressed than I, but I just haven't been super impressed by what I've seen from Radigan, BBK, and the like.
I mean, the real tragedy is of Vi Jones.
Yeah, it is.
Right? If Vi Jones could be out there right now, I think we'd be learning some really important things, but it's not happening. So no Vi Jones. I don't know if we're going to see Wagner in this game, maybe for like a drive or two.
I'd be so shocked.
I don't think we're going to see Brooks in this game. I think Brooks's target date is week 1. So we're probably going to see more O'Connell. And he's a guy who really didn't play well last week, but it's so thin, his opportunity to make the roster. So I'm not even really thinking about it that much. Like if he does well, then maybe he makes the practice squad, but still an uphill battle. I don't know. So I would love to watch the linebacker position, but the guy who's the most interesting is hurt, unfortunately. And I'm pretty sure he can't play in this game. I haven't heard anything to the contrary.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything to the contrary either. I think definitely with the way these guys have played, Radigan's been a little bit better in the run, but both of them have really struggled in the past. And just they to my eyes, they just haven't really shown themselves to make you feel good. And Vi Jones, he's not IR'd, right? He is coming back at some point.
All they said is that the injury was legit, which usually means kind of serious. But to my knowledge, he is not on any kind of IR yet.
So we'll just have to track with that and see how, that one goes. And I think if we're looking at carrying an extra guy in certain positions here, Brendan, as some people are like, I have a lot of people in my chat advocating for Levi Bell, where it's hard for me to see how you can go to 6 on the edges.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're stuck at 5.
I really feel like the only way is you trade Taylor in a separate trade.
I can't see it either. Other than that, it's too many guys, and you have so many other positions where there's spots you have on this team where you have like the extra guy. Like many teams only have 2 tight ends. You've got the extra third. You're going to be locked into the 5 corners. You're going to be locked into the 4 to 5 safeties. I just can't see where you got that room on to snip from anywhere else outside maybe linebacker. You know, three middle linebackers.
Yeah.
Like, well, one of them be healthy.
There was one. Actually, there was one thing that was interesting. In college, he played 3 tech. And I've heard contradictory information about how much he weighs. Some websites say he weighs like 260, others say he weighs 280. Like if he weighs 280, he's really not that far away from being able to play on the defensive line in a 3-4. So what if you're getting him and you're going, okay, not only is he going to be able to play some edge, he can also play inside, because he did play inside on, I think it was 9 snaps in the preseason game against the Cowboys. So what if we decide we got to keep him because of this versatility?
I think it's an interesting proposition. I think what he's done and showed out and the way he has, where he's not just merely been good, Brendan, but he's really, really flashed. And then let's also, acknowledge the fact that right now Mike Morris has just had the shoulder surgery. Where is he going to be at on his rookie year? And maybe he gets back and it can make some impact down the line. Early injuries for young rookies is not a good precursor for them for the forthcoming season. And so having that guy, to your point on that's now an extra guy down in there, could be of some value, especially with Morris. He wasn't looking at playing, I don't think, a lot of snaps in the rotation, but just being kind of that Miles Adams guy from last year in the rotation. And if he's that size, I'm down to try him down in there. I'm down to give it a shot, especially if you can do it in the sort of what we would call we need an updated name for it, Brendan, but our updated Cheetah NASCAR packages where the kid's not going to be run at, and you could just have him pin his ears back and go.
I really like the old Giants one. It was a 4 aces when they did Strahan, OC, Tuck, and Kiwanuka.
That's pretty good. I like that. But those guys were also really all good. You call yourself an ace, you better have 3 of us races. One's kind of a joker. But
I mean, Kiwanuka wasn't that good. He was
he was okay. He was one of those guys for a season or two but he's a 1st round pick, I think. So he had a little bit of that pedigree to him of the background going. So we've got we're going to keep an eye on this game. Levi Bell, linebacker position, Trey Brown, Mike Jackson on the secondary. These are the battles to really keep an eye on this game, see how those guys are holding up, because this is definitely going to have real world consequences to this team in the upcoming season, I think, to varying places. Back end guy in the rotation or starting cornerback, be it on the other side. We're not going to see Witherspoon again. No surprise there, Brendan. That's sad to see. Hopefully the kid can come back this year and give us something somewhere, somehow.
Yeah, they commented today he should be back at practice next week, so he's got a chance to be physically ready week 1.
So we can only hope, and we'll have to maybe unveil and get our first see of action of him in the first game going against Cooper Kupp if they try to do that. I just keep thinking they'll go at least a week 2 with that. I wouldn't think they would throw that to that kid in that way in the first game. That seems kind of, I don't know. Just that give him the extra week, especially it's a hammy. I see that week 2 thing as being the spot, both with JSN and Witherspoon. Just holding the week 2. We'll get through this Rams game. It'll be fine.
Right, exactly.
Other than that, Jarek Reed, Kobe Bryant at the safety positions. Those will be my 2 guys I'm looking at. Is that pretty much where your eyes will be too when you?
Unfortunately, it doesn't look like John Sutherland is going to have a shot here, because he's actually played well. And I don't know what's going on with Joey Blunt. Apparently he's not injured bad, but I haven't heard that he's actually going to play in this game.
Practice squad stashing. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
sandbagging.
Okay with that.
That's what they call that on the golf course, is sandbagging. Which, hey, I'm good with it too, man. If you play him and he goes out there and balls and you lose it, and we need some depth.
Yeah, so that's kind of the issue. There's not much competition for Reed and Kobe to make the roster or anything. I'm sure they're going to at this point. They're healthy, and I mean, Kobe played good in one of the games. I'll say that. Reed, I think, has played pretty well in both. Better in the first game, but I think both those guys have their roster spots pretty well locked up. So, like, who would take their roster spot? It's not going to be Blunt. It's not going to be Sutherland. So who?
Well, I think it'd be the coaching staff would be kind of wrong for moving Kobe to a safety position, and then he looks rough playing safety in games. And it's like, well, that's understandable. You're moving him now to a 3rd position, and he's got to learn it. And if he shows you here, moment there, you're gonna have to kind of give that time for that kind of change to set and be able to go. Because I don't think that was something that they just that's not been the plan necessarily there with Kobe for what they want to do with him. So I agree with you. His spot's certain. Sutherland was really going to have an outside shot of making it if he was, but now you got him probably on the practice squad. Starts to get a little easier to look at this practice squad at what you're probably going to do, especially in light of Kovac not here. They'll probably go one running back. But it'll be very easy, I think, at the end of the day as we get through this. Despite going from 90 to 55 here, Brendan, I think, tell me if you disagree, it'll be, I think, a little bit easier to look at who the practice squad will be coming at the end of this game.
I've already put together a mock practice squad, and I feel decently about it.
Yeah, I do. Don't you do? It's weird. I mean, we got one more game to play, but you do kind of feel like, no, this guy, they're going to want to do that there. They're going to want this for the insurance to that. It does kind of add up. There will always be a little bit of surprises, but you can basically take a look at who's going to be on that squad at this point, and probably including Sutherland and Blunt both. I would reckon to guess are probably going to both end up on that edge on that spot. Yeah, not much else out there as far as any other spots go. Oh, you're going to see a lot of third stringers, I'm sure, in this game for a great deal of the time, Brendan. Just hopefully we can see another game here where the team comes out. If we're going to look at this not from a player standpoint, but just from a team productivity standpoint, running the ball, stopping the run for me. I know it's backup linemen and all that stuff, especially you have a guy like Bradford on the field. Show me some A-gap runs behind Bradford. Let me see what he can do, at the point of attack when he's in there. That's his bread and butter is to be a big mauler up there. So, and stopping the run, they've done it pretty good throughout the preseason. That's the point we're hoping to take a step forward. So, that's the place where you really look at here. And then just again, another game where you're trying to put together through the blueprint of a team win like they have. I love the thought process this year, them game after game, you and I saying game after game going, look, this is a team effort here. And not just in a generalized fashion, but then you see how it all connects together from the team aspect. Offense did their part here. Defense came in to do theirs. Special teams came in to play. And that's the way it's played out so far.
Yeah. Last thing I can think of real quick. Oluwatimi's back for this game, supposedly. I think that's significant. That's
Is he
one thing
back?
I forgot. Yeah, they're saying they expect him to play.
Okay. Because they were asking Carol about it, and I couldn't, how it is with the stupid mic thing where you have to sit there and basically, I'm like John Travolta in Blowout, just listening to, with the questions when they're asking it, because they don't have you can't hear anything. So that's good. Then that's where I will definitely be looking for, because Olu I'm a guy I'm very excited about, but it's been out for a lot of this preseason. And Evan Brown's got the job kind of locked up at this point, but you really do want to see if Olu can go out there and give you something.
Yeah. I believe it is open for him to make starts later this season, but not if he doesn't get to play at all in this portion of the season. So I'm excited to see him. Like that first game, he played about as well as Evan Brown. I think it was pretty close. So
he was solid.
Key reps.
And it could end up being impactful too if you're trying to lean into being an offense that wants to be pass heavy. Something that stood out to me with watching Evan Brown and looking at his grades, watching the tape, looking at the grades from these two games is that he is the guy that came as advertised, Brendan, as being a guy a bit better as a run blocker than he was as a pass protector. Olu's a bit better as a pass protector than a run blocker. And if you do end up kind of leaning into this offensive line where, maybe you're only true, but you're going to be throwing the ball a lot and leaning into your pass protection sets a lot, then perhaps Olu then has more of an opportunity to get on the field and take away that starting job from Evan Brown, if that's the identity of the offense as we go into the season. We'll have to see if that's the way it goes, but I could see it maybe playing out that way. It's hard because this is the antithesis of Carroll in building an offensive line and what he wants to do, but you never know, Brendan. Olu might just be that good in that respect of things. We'll see this week with him. A couple little final things that I think would be interesting here. I wanted to ask you about. You dropped a video today on your channel about, trade pieces and assets the Seahawks have and that they could utilize in a trade. And indeed, they're sitting in a very unique place here where they have some cap space right now when many teams out there aren't sitting with any cap space. They have extra draft pick, just by that Denver third rounder, which is a valuable pick. And then you actually have players in addition to a pick that you can put together with it. So you can come up with some very creative packages here, Brendan, if you want to bring on a player. And I know I've asked you about this a couple of times. I think it's a question I need to keep checking with you on and asking you about, because this is an ever-changing situation, and certainly the landscape of what we're hearing about from trade requests around the league and where our division's at. If it starts to weaken, if you start to feel more like, wait, this is a year we should not just merely go, well, it's year 2 of the rebuild, be patient, wait, no, the iron's hot, strike, go. Now's the time. Let's click this in. I mean, our division's paper thin right now. The Niners situation may completely undo them. Is now the right time to strike? Is now the right time to put this package together? Is it to go out there and make a big swing here with it? in the thinking of right now, you can catch teams to make them willing to make this deal. You can wait down the road, but there might be a point you get to cut down day, or let's even go past cut down day, Brendan. We just talked about being the trade deadline. You get to trade deadline as we did 2 years ago when we had $11 million in voidable money we pushed forward. We're sitting on cap space. No deal presented itself because the 17th game season made every team think that they could go out there and compete the upcoming year. Where do you lean to doing that? Do you go, let's try to make this aggressive move right now, John? Let's try to do that. Or I got the bigger return I might get. I might have to give up less down the road in both of those things if I can hold on until the trade deadline.
Yeah, I feel like it's too early to make that determination. Like, you gotta get to the trade deadline, you gotta see where you are, and you gotta see where these other teams are. What if the Colts start like 2-3 or something?
Mm-hmm.
Or I mean, like, what if I haven't looked at their schedule? What if their first 2 games are against really easy teams, and then they're at that moment at least feeling like, hey, we got a little something here. This isn't so bad. We got to let this ride, and then maybe they're not interested.
Yeah.
And these other teams that we think of being as really bad, and probably will be really bad for the most part. I think it's a little too early. I'm definitely open to it though, and I think that most years you should be open to it. You should always be looking for opportunities to grab things at a depressed value. You should always be looking for opportunities to figure out what the market inefficiency is and take advantage of it.
So let's put this into kind of a real world example. You kind of are in a position right now, unless you got creative with your cap and with having other players convert their base to bonus, you're locked into being able to make a kind of a one big chunk move out there. So if I've got right now in the moment, I can go out and make a big chunk move, Brendan, but I'm having to pay the piper to do that, where I'm not getting the discount because the teams like the Lance discount or the other guy we're just talking about, the Simmons discount, where you're getting that potential trade deadline deal if it does present itself there, but then you don't have the cap to do that at that time. But like I was saying, there was that year where you tried to sit there and wait to see what you could get. Schneider had set the table. He'd put the forks out, played out, gotten the salt and peppers on the table to go make that trade deadline deal. But then he calls and there's nobody wanting to make the trade. And that risk that you took versus maybe having to be a little more aggressive into training camp to make that deal. Are we in a stage where we trust this year that market will present itself like you're saying at the trade deadline? Is kind of, I took a long time to get around to that. But that's kind of my bottom line, the question with it.
I don't want to force it. I don't want to chase it if it doesn't present itself in a decent state. I don't want to Jamal Adams this.
Yeah.
I don't feel the need to do it. I like the team well enough, and I'm not sitting here feeling like it's now or never. Like we're not the Niners, right? The Niners are probably sitting there right now thinking it's now or never.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling that way. So I'm going to look for a good opportunity, and if the opportunity isn't there, then oh well, so be it.
Yeah. That's fair enough.
I got no problem with that.
That's fair enough. And I find myself landing on it with you too. I'll take the gamble. I'll roll the dice. And I think this year, this is going to be a year that's not like that a couple of years ago. There's some teams you can see, I think, already from, Cardinals to Rams to, there are a variety of different ones that I think are not going to be in it and are going to be willing to offload more. So there will be a benefit, I think, to wait in this particular year versus have to make the move now. But I do get asked about a lot. So I want to ask you about Brendan, because it's something that's at the forefront of my subs and people in my chat when we do the live streams is saying, when is it now? Go make this deal now. And I think it's something you got to think for, like you just said, for the reasons you got to kind of balance out here. We're not trying to overpay. We're trying to get the depressed asset. We're trying to strike at the right time where we can kind of take advantage of another team. Like the Giants just took advantage of the Cardinals with that 7th round pick for Simmons.
Like I've already gone on record saying I don't want Chris Jones. I don't want to do that because I know that's going to be too expensive. I'm not interested in that. But I feel like there's a level, the level of the trade return you'd have to come up with to get Buckner would be less. So I'm way more interested in that. Like, I'm looking at Chris Jones. I think you're going to have to give up a first and a third and players, at least Darryl Taylor. I'm not doing that. This year's draft is too good, or no, next year's draft is too good. But if you're telling me you can get Buckner and maybe only give up, the big piece would be their 2nd or 3rd round pick.
Yeah.
That's a little different. That's a little more appealing, I think. So I'm definitely not trying to break the internet here with the world's biggest trade, but I am definitely going to make calls. And look, I've said this before, I'll say it again. If you're a GM in any sport, it's your job to always be making calls and be in on everything. Even if you don't end up doing anything, you want to at least have as many conversations as possible.
You do. And what's good about our general manager is he's prided himself, Brendan, on saying I'm a guy that's in on every deal. And that's what you'd like. I don't need you to pull the trigger on every deal, but just that you're there listening, ear to the ground, always saying, what is it going to cost? What would be the cost for us to be in on this? What's the deals here, guys? What are we talking? So we'll see where they go with it. I'm not as against, I don't think at the end of the day, the Jones move. For me, it would be a huge risk. I can't deny that. It would be a one that you could definitely end up having to pay the price. You bring up a certain thing that I probably haven't given as much consideration to, which is that this draft is going to be so strong this upcoming year. That needs to maybe factor a little bit more into this decision when it comes to flipping picks because of the value that's going to be there throughout this given draft. And I do think that that's certainly valid. It's interesting too to think of what the Chiefs will get here, where he is as good as he is, but he is 30 years old. You do have to pay him somewhere around what he's going to want, $30 million. Do they get those assets back to make that kind of deal done, like you say, at that point, knowing that the other team that is on the end of that has to make that, kind of appeal, especially now as the situation's been belabored. You're not moving him in an off season. You're just before the start of the season as he's turning 30. But I think they end up holding on to him. Bottom line for me, I don't think they're trading Chris Jones. I think for both player and team on this one, my theory on this, Brendan, is that it actually works in both parties' interests to just wait the 8 games and then come back. Aside from the money that Jones loses, I think it's smart on his part to do that, and then the Chiefs smart on their part to do it.
Haven't seen one of these in a while, I feel like. Haven't seen one of these sit the most of the season out, holdouts, and then come back just in time to get in shape for the playoffs.
I haven't either. And if it was a younger player, I wouldn't have faith in it. If it wasn't a guy that, hasn't taken care of himself despite already getting paid once before. So he's shown himself to be a guy that can stay in shape and be, self-motivated. I wouldn't have necessarily as much faith. But also he's played so many games the past few years. You look at that guy, what has he probably played? A whole nother season of football in his career and just the postseason alone, as far as the extra games on that body. And Al Woods said this a couple of years ago. Remember Al Woods when he was asked about why he came back and was able to have the impact he did. And he's like, I took that season off and all of those micro tears and those minor injuries throughout my body got a chance to really fully heal and get better and through. And I would wonder with a guy like Jones, if that's not something that he would as well, maybe benefit from. And I just don't think he goes out and has 5 sacks at the end of the year through the last games. He goes out and shows his presence in the playoffs. He's still going to go get that contract next year, especially as the cap goes up. Some team would be willing to pay him. And I don't think the Chiefs are going to go back and double dip on the franchise tag, because what is it going to cost him at that point? Almost $30 million a year with where the edge class, because it goes 15% up when you do it a second time.
Would Chris Jones be considered an edge, or would he be considered a defensive lineman for tag purposes?
He'd be tackled but you've got Donald having pushed all these tackles that have gotten paid recently will have pushed that franchise tag amount because it's the top 5 paid market deals. And you got everyone from LaRon Payne to Donald, from the 23 to 31 million points. So what's going to be the average? Probably about 25 million on Jones. And that's as Mahomes now is into the 4th year on his contract. That's really kicking in. Kelsey wants to be paid. That's why I do think there is a chance with this, if they're looking at it forward thinking wise, of we've got to do some other things here. Creed Humphrey's about due to be paid, right? And they don't necessarily have a ton of money to make that happen. And the Jones thing's something worth monitoring. I like you say, I just don't. It's got such a small.
Do they pay Creed Humphrey? Mm-hmm. Creed Humphrey, there's no way he's more valuable than Chris Jones. If you're saying we're not gonna bend ourselves backwards for Chris Jones, then I don't think you're doing it for Creed Humphrey either, actually. The only thing I could see maybe is it's because it's his first extension. Maybe if you get him early, he gives you a little bit of a break. Mm-hmm. But I find it very hard to believe they would think a center would be one of the indispensable pieces of that team.
Well, and maybe it's a bit of a pessimistic view from their standpoint of it on this, Brendan, but what if it's also that them looking at it saying the guy's 30 years old and he's going into we don't trust the health situation, like with Tyreek. I mean, Tyreek, you weren't moving him because he was bad the prior year. He was still as good as ever. You're moving him, I think, because you didn't want to pay him at that money at that age. Creed Humphrey's going to be 25 years old. So, you do have a guy from football years standpoint, like dog years, who's a baby compared to Chris Jones. And yeah, I think he's the guy. I mean, his number one skill is as a pass protecting center. He's not really a road grader, but he's the best probably pass protecting center in football. That they have committed And they went the left turn on this way, Brendan, and this is what's driven them away from Tyreek Hill. And frankly, they were really close to Orlando Brown still doing the deal. And that's where that Tampa Bay Super Bowl, where he was under all that duress for the whole game and beaten in half, their general manager came out of that and said, never again. And so he's going to stay committed to keeping the line built up for Mahomes up front, even when he didn't have the playmakers on the outside, which when you lost Tyreek last year, I mean, you were to the point of having to make a trade for Kadarius Toney. So I think they will have to. Yeah, I think Creed gets paid. I think Creed definitely gets paid. I think Kelsey gets another deal. I think Kelsey's one of the one sacred cows there that they're not going to look to let go.
Yeah, that angle of them being able to take care of him a year early and maybe get a little bit of a break, that actually kind of makes me reconsider. But I do not think they consider Creed Humphrey to be a sacred cow. I don't think any center is capable of being a sacred cow in any circumstance. Pretty much, it's a replaceable position most of the time.
It is, but it's also informed here in this situation by where the rest of that line is at from an age standpoint and also from where the talent is on that Chiefs line. Orlando Brown went this offseason in free agency. They've got the left guard of the Patriots who went there a couple of years ago in free agency who's getting up there in age. You know, who is the guy on that line who's going to be making money right now or getting paid? And to me, it's Creed's the number one guy of any of those guys that you're most likely to pay in that situation on top of this stuff. I agree that it's not necessarily a bedrock position, but they did put a second rounder on the kid. And, he's played basically as the best center in football throughout since he's entered the league, or damn near close with the guy out of the Eagles, Kelsey.
Yeah. I'm trying to think who else would they have to pay. Not really. I guess that's about it. So maybe it's not so bad. Maybe they could decide, okay, these are the three guys. Yeah. Okay. I mean, they draft well, generally speaking. I feel like I like most of their draft picks. So that helps a lot with having extra money.
They know where their bread is buttered too, though, Brendan. We're offensive driven. We're going to have the quarterback run this. We're going to protect our quarterback. We'll give him enough to work with, and we'll try to get by on the defensive side of the ball. Not that we'll be bad defensively, but we'll get by. And Jones has been an important part because you've had with this get by defense with this dominant force down there, which is the unusual thing you'd have on a get by defense. But I think they probably trust their ability to go find another good defender. And, Karlaftis went there last year. I think he's going to develop pretty good for him. Their linebacking core is one of the better ones in football, kind of quietly. I mean, they didn't even get that one kid out on the field last year. They were so good at the position, with where it was standing. So I don't know. It'll be a fun thing to watch, but I think, like we say, it's all kind of as much fun as talk about Jones and the Chiefs on this one. I think they do end up standing on the situation of just saying, we'll wait till week 8. Take your time, big guy. You come in here, we'll have you ready for the stretch run. They play Denver twice in the first 7 weeks of the season, does Kansas City. It's an eminently winnable record out the gate for them. And I know what you're saying about coming in late, injury thing, all that. I mean, this is going to be the thing with Bosa that I'm going to be monitoring this year too, Brendan, the guy that's had his ACL twice torn over, who's now missed all of training camp with the Niners and is now just going to come back. Niner fans were in my chat last night. Oh, well, he just comes right back and he's bionic, man. So he just, he'll step on the field and it's like, he didn't need that practice. That's, if anything, saved his body. And I don't buy it. I think you need training camp.
Well, I mean, you need to bank those wins. It's not like, he gets there in week 8, but you got to bank wins in the meantime, right? Like, for the Chiefs, maybe it's okay because their offense is going to be so good. But the Niners are going to lean heavily on that defense to win games this year.
They are. And he's the straw that makes that defense, stirs that drink. I mean, Warner's fine and good and Armstead's good, but that's the guy that makes your defense run, is the defensive player of the year. And I don't know. That's going to be, he comes back. I'll be very surprised if he gets through for this full year now at full health. They just finished their training camp, Brendan. It was the final day yesterday for the Niners, though they're still practicing. But it just kind of like puts it in, to me, kind of clear picture here of where he is as far as how long he has been out. And they still don't have a deal done. So we'll see how it goes, all the way around with these teams. But I we'll see on the Chiefs too. Chris Jones, man. You never know. Maybe it gets up. Eric99 has been a member of the channel for 22 long months. Eric, thank you for that long time support of the channel here at the Hawks Nest. And you can be a member too right now. As Eric is, he says, hey, B&B, what are your win predictions this year?
I'm sticking with 11 for now, but we got to get through this last preseason game before I make it official, punch it in. But I'm on 11 at the moment.
Yeah, me and Brendan will be having a whole show around predictions this year, both for players and for the team. Obviously, there'll be more this is going to be kind of a soft, as Brendan says. I got a chance to change it right up until the last minute. So we did good on our predictions last year, by the way. I think in a year like that, rebuild wise, you and I were not one of those folks that was in the 4-win territory of things.
No, we weren't. I was not. Definitely not.
No. And so, I think we did pretty good, all things being considered, where we were last year with it. But Brendan's at 11. I've gotten super homery in the last couple months. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, Brendan. My lips are stained, my tongue all the way to the back of the throat. I'm at 12 right now. I got the Niners for 13 this year, 13 wins, winning the division. But I do think with us being able to feast factor, the 4-0 on the division, I think that pushes up just a little bit higher than I might have thought when the schedule first came out, or looking at things kind of, initially.
Yeah.
But Eric, thank you for the long-time support as a member of the channel. Fat Daddy Stacks, thank you for the $5. I appreciate you as well, Fat Daddy. Hope you're having a good night, man. It says, looking forward to seeing Malik Flowers this next game. Any thoughts on this guy?
I got nothing on Malik Flowers.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I usually have something to offer with Malik, but I can't think of any background of having watched him in college or being kind of aware of him at all, with it on it,
Played at a very small college.
Oh, did he? Okay. So it's hard with some of those guys that are just on that fringe edge. You just don't have a lot of tape to go to, because I just don't have all access to all games, but he's kind of under the radar guy. So yeah, sorry. Don't have too much for you on that one, Fat Daddy. I appreciate the $5 though, man. Wish I had something with it, but I don't. Sanchez, thank you for being a member of the Hawks Nest for 10 long months. So the Colts are going to ruin Richardson's career.
6 for 17 tonight, by the way.
Ooh.
So
very ruinous.
Yeah, not good. Not good. But yeah, it seems like that's a very distinct possibility here. The only thing is, they do have a pretty decent offensive line right now in Indy, so at least it's not going to be like an Andrew Luck situation.
Yeah, as long as they can perform to historical norms. You were talking the other night about a Colts fan coming to your chat saying that the Quentin Nelson's a shell of himself.
Yeah, that may be true, but even beyond that, I like the German left tackle they have, Bernard Reimann.
That's true.
They got Ryan Kelly, who's still decent, and Braden Smith is the right tackle. That's a very young and very good offensive line, I think.
Yeah, it should be at least workable for them, as long as those guys, Kelly and Nelson in particular, because I think Kelly's had a little bit of a similar trajectory as Nelson recently, if I'm not mistaken, where there's been a bit of an underperformance from both those two guys, and that changes a little bit of that, because Raymond was so raw coming out. You were going to need to give him some time to find his footing. And I'll say this about it, whether this line's good right now or not for Richardson going into the future. This Indy team's taken Richardson, not this being the right stage of their path to take a quarterback, as their general manager acknowledged. They just sort of took him because that was the best. They liked him so much, and they're going to grab him. The Bears did this a couple of years as well. And that when that's your inclination drawing you towards a quarterback, that can be one that can lead you to a point of problems, or, like you say, the ruining of a career, because you've not set the stage for the guy. You're grabbing the guy, and now you're trying to put the stage up in front of him. And it's like, hey, the performance is on. We're rolling. Cameras are rolling. Lights are on. And we just are still setting up the set. We got to get the set up. Richardson can be fine for a year in this. And the Colts did this to Andrew Luck once before. Let's also acknowledge that, Brendan. I mean, Andrew Luck did not have a 10 and 15-year career because, in my opinion, not that he didn't love football, but because the Colts got the ever-loving hell beat out of him through the first part of his career, got him broken. And then he was like, I'm done rehabbing. I'm done being in pain all the time. And so, if they do go this route with him this year, Sanchez, where it's bad in that same manner as it was once before, I hope to God that they just go all in this offseason, like for instance, the Chiefs did after that Tampa Bay game, where they're like, we're going to get an Orlando Brown. We're drafting Creed Humphrey. We're going to sign the guy out there of the Patriots and bring him in here, where you just go, it's now all about getting this line together for this kid first and foremost before anything else. And hopefully they do that. I don't know, Brendan, though. Sometimes people just can't learn, sometimes there's those lessons that just hard-headed organizations just kind of refuse to learn. You're right. They're a little bit better than this. Isn't David Carr Texans territory, right?
Yeah.
Where he's going to, but just don't, I hate when I see that, Brendan, when teams do that, where they get the quarterback and then they just lay him out to dry. And it's like, everyone then comes to the conclusion the guy's a bust and he sucks. And it's like, dude, well, I mean, it's also a bit on the team, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, hey, maybe he'll be there in like 3 years for us to try to recoup rehab.
We jump all over him. Pete would love. Pete loved Richardson. I think if he had fell to 5, we take him. Do you believe that?
I think it's possible. I'm not convinced because I think we wanted to win now, and maybe Pete would have been thinking, I don't want a quarterback. I already have a quarterback, but I think we really liked him. I'll say that much. We definitely really liked him.
So if I had you bet, like you had to give an answer one way or the other, and like a certain answer that if I've got a bet on a chip on the stack on the table, you'd bet to the fact they still would have gone a different direction with it.
I think so, but I do think that they liked him a lot, so I can't completely rule it out.
Yeah. I just think he had so many physical things that Carroll would have loved. He loved his 5-star quarterbacks back in the day. And I think that guy would have really resonated with him. Also knowing that he was going to slide from Carolina, he's going to slide through the Texans and fall where he's like, they're not realizing how good this guy is. Roy Froelich, thank you for being a Hawks Nest member for 18 long months. I do appreciate you on that. It says, did you hear about Jerry Jeudy getting carted off the field?
Yeah, he's supposedly going to be okay.
Is he all right? Okay.
They said it sounds like he's going to miss the first game and maybe another game, but that's about it. So could have been worse, but it is a hamstring, so that could affect his whole season easily.
Yeah, and it just does feel again like that energy, maybe not to as much an extreme degree of last year as much Brendan here, but it seems like that's still there, that energy there with Denver from last year kind of carrying over of just a dark, and it's even a Russ thing, just a bad injury luck thing. Tim Patrick going down. They've had, I think, an injury or other two on the other side of it.
Jonas Griffith.
You want Jeudy. I mean, he's being set up because this is a contract year for him. I mean, this guy is ahead of Cortland Sutton. This is your number 1 wide receiver. This is a guy they're expecting to try to get to, I think, 1,300 yards this year. And like Hammy, I think, can last. Look at Witherspoon, so not a good sign for Denver. But we do have their 3rd round pick. So I know there's people out there hoping for us to have
we hope it's their
Oh, that's right. That's right. It's between the Saints. It's going to be the Saints.
Although, we're going to be rooting against the Saints anyway. I hate that team, so no problem there.
Yeah. It's tit for tat on that one. Either way with it. But doesn't bode well for the Broncos on this one. They're going to need Jeudy for every moment of this game. No more Patrick there. You're down to Cortland Sutton. And they drafted the Mims kid, I guess. Mims. Hopefully he's good for him. Because they lost Hamler too. Hamler's out there too.
Hamler's out, yeah. I follow a Broncos fan on X. Follow a Broncos fan, and he actually today kind of just completely rolled over. And he's thinking about Caleb and Drake May. He's like, screw this. I want Caleb and Drake May. Let's just lose. I don't want to go 7-10 or 8-9. He's just like, this team is not making the playoffs. Like, this is not a good team. I just want a real quarterback.
No second chance for Russ with Peyton, huh?
He kind of was like getting back on the Wilson train, but I think he now kind of feels like even if Wilson plays good, it's not going to be enough for the team to get in. And he's like at the end of the day, we're sitting here hoping that Wilson can have like 2 more decent seasons. Like, what is that really worth in the grand scheme of things compared to I can get maybe the best quarterback prospect ever for the next 15 years?
So maybe an early misstep of his evaluation of the team then for Peyton to come in this year, and rather than, okay, let's start to bleed this out. Let's get the venom out of the veins. Rather than do that, you sign McGlinchey. You sign Zach Allen to the almost equivalent Draymond Jones signing that we made from the Cardinals. If the team wasn't good enough, the team is now, then that does kind of put them a little bit more perilously longer down that line to get to the place that guy wants to get in the way he's describing.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I can't blame him. You wouldn't expect a head coach, especially one like Sean Payton, to be like, all right, let's lose. Lose on 3, guys. 1, 2, 3, lose. He's not going to do that. But I mean, I can understand why a fan thinking about the big picture might be sitting there thinking to themselves, man, I really would rather have Caleb Williams than a one-and-done season this year.
Yeah. I would be, look, for that kind of quarterback that's there, the quarterback, either of those 2 guys, it would definitely look attractive to me. But the problem is that you've gotten yourself good enough to where, you're not going to make the playoffs, but you ain't going to be bad as the Rams. You ain't going to be bad as the Cardinals. And there's probably another 2 or 3 other teams we could find that you're not going to be as bad as them either. And so you're not in the vicinity to get that done. You're not going to have the trade capital to put package of picks together because you have been down picks now for 3 straight years after you gave up another first rounder for Peyton to bring him in. I feel bad for the Bronco fans and Pernas out there, but it's not getting better anytime soon. Unfortunately, on this front of it, when it comes to Bronco fan, and if I'm paying Brandon, I would just not have spent the money. I would have been looking at like, okay, I'm going to try to reclaim Wilson, and I don't have an answer to that until we get through this season with him. I have to work with him for a year to get there. So do I sign this McGlinchey guy who's like, he's not a great pass protector. He's not really helping out a ton of Wilson by bringing him in there. And Allen, is he going to make the difference on your team being good defensively or bad, or being a difference maker? Not really. I would have just said, let's bleed out, get through a year and get to the other side of this. And then we'll make our evaluation on it.
The issue I have with that is if you bleed it out like that, your team is going to be so bad, Wilson's just going to get killed again. Now he might get killed anyway, but if you're not, I mean, how would Wilson feel about that? Mm-hmm. Like if he watches his team make no effort to get better from their terrible season last year, wouldn't he be like, I didn't come here for this. This is the exact opposite. Like, what would happen then?
It's a good question. I've thought of this. My opinion on this is that I think Sean Payton came to that job without being necessarily married to Russell long-term. Yeah. And if I'm right about that, then you weren't married to having to make this work in the interim by making those signings or making this team really good. You had the confidence of the fans. You had the confidence of the ownership to say, look, you guys have handed me a crap sandwich. I'm going to bite down on it. I'm going to chew 25 times before I swallow, and we'll get to the other side of this. But instead of saying that, he was saying, no, it actually is a turkey sandwich. There's some cheese in here. There's a little bit of mayonnaise in here. And you say about you just said the thing that would have been my answer to you on that was, well, what happens when you get him killed? You're going to get him killed with McGlinchey anyway. McGlinchey just hasn't been exposed for his pass protection issues because Shanahan runs an offense where he gets the ball out of his quarterback's hands in 2.6 seconds. That's the opposite and inverse of Russell Wilson as a quarterback. And so those McGlinchey worries you have about him, in my opinion, in pass protection now just are that much more on display. And then that means that signing looks that much more worse to me because it's not accomplishing anything for you then, really. Maybe better as a run blocker there than what you were getting from Billy Turner.
Yeah, but if you didn't do anything, it probably would have even been a little bit worse. Like they got Ben Powers too, who's a pretty good guard. So I don't know. It's very weird. It's like the whole thing is kind of funny because we're kind of saying like Wilson is something that Peyton has to tolerate rather than something that he's here to coach. It like makes me think of the scene in Goodfellas where Tommy thinks he's getting made. Mm-hmm. Like Wilson shows up to Denver like, oh man, I get to work with Sean Payton, only to find out that Sean Payton's just waiting to execute you so he can move on to the next guy. Mm-hmm. Like it almost feels like that.
I think it is a little bit like that. And it's not to try to, I think this is also a bit of the victim of circumstance issue, Brennan, because it's if Payton had the money and the draft capital to build that proper team up around Wilson to where then he's got a strong offensive line and pass protection, like he could supply to Drew Brees back in the day, and the right playmakers on the outside and that type of thing. But instead he's having to do some patchwork kind of moves to make this all happen and work because it is in such bad state. That offensive line has been one of the worst in football going on 3 straight years. And it's been continuing to trend worse and worse from that time. It's gone from 26 on down. That's where it started, was 26. And so I go, you weren't going to fix that in an offseason if you're paid from that standpoint. Your Wilson guy's getting kind of killed no matter what, unless he can just run a very low volume passing attack. Everything with Wilson under center, a lot of these bootleg rollout kind of plays where they're going to run, and then having Wilson just do, I'm going to, like he did in that second preseason game that I watched of him, where they had him just running like Lamar, like a little bit, like
if he does that, he's gonna he'll be lucky to play 3 games this year. I feel like I was watching that and thinking he does look fast, but he lost the 15 pounds, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So if he's taking hits, which he will take hits if he plays like that, there's just no way around it. He's not gonna last. Like I watched that and thought to myself, like this is I understand that in the short term it makes things fun and maybe even productive. But I was watching that thinking to myself, this is going to end very badly if this is how he plays in the regular season.
Yeah. To your point, he didn't gain the 30 pounds or whatever it was that he gained, the 30, 20 pounds, whatever it was. He didn't gain that weight for just he liked mac and cheese. He was gaining that weight to give him the extra cushion on those kind of blows that he knew he was going to take from time to time. And yeah, he as we've seen in recent years, the injuries are starting to come up, bubble up a little bit more with Russ here, as does happen as you get to be an older quarterback that's taken a lot of hits in this league. It's no kind of surprise with that. And I do feel bad with Russ right now that there isn't a fix in that situation a little bit, but I just don't think, no matter how good Peyton is as a coach, with as stacked as the AFC is, with as stacked as the AFC West is in general, absent the Raiders, I just don't see where he has a pathway here to find himself back. But it'll be. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, the thing is, the Raiders might be bad, but they're not going to be like Rams bad or Cardinals bad. They're not tanking. They're not throwing anything away. They're just not very good. So that is absolutely a team that could beat a good team on any week. They're not. They didn't like wave the white flag this offseason.
No, in fact, it'd be one of those teams, if you want to put a list of teams together, Brendan, that I'd be happy I don't have to play. I'd be happy I don't have to play that team. They'd be a tough team to play. We saw it last year at home where they took us right to the brink. I mean, it would not be a fun team to necessarily, it wouldn't be lining up to go play the Broncos versus a lot of other teams out there. They're going to win almost as many games as they probably lose, maybe win one or two more games than they lose it. We'll see where it goes, but still fall short because they're just missing a couple of items you'd have to have to make, I think, that team work for Russ. And then they'll be interesting. I don't know. We'll see what they do long term there too with him.
And the amazing thing about all this is Wilson killed the Philly trade. Like, he had the trade to the team that almost won the Super Bowl with a quarterback that can't throw the ball past 8 yards. Mm-hmm. He had it. He had everything that he ever could have wanted, and he was like, "No, I want to go to Denver and a team that's about to be in a massive rebuild in less than a year." It's crazy.
Yeah, especially because he's from like that. It's kind of his neck of the woods too. That's also his like home Virginia. I mean, he's pretty close to Philadelphia. No, it's not right now. It's kind of close.
Closer than Denver.
Closer than Denver. That's definitely, as I say about Russ last year, whether it's his fault or not, just he ran into so many different things that just were turning the wrong way from him. It's like everything, it just kept coming up snake eyes for him and stuff like that. And it sucks for him a little bit in that, because probably would have been a lot different story if he'd gone to an Eagles team.
I made a video about that when that was announced. Do you have a theory as to why he nixed the Philly trade?
Was Philly going to pay him the contract that the Broncos were going to pay him?
That's kind of what I was thinking too. Maybe because Howie, I mean, right now he's king of the world, right?
He's king of the world, yeah.
So maybe Howie was like, "Okay, I'll trade for you, but I'm not opening up the piggy bank yet. You got to prove it."
Well, it'll be interesting on your side of this now. If we get years down the line and they ask Roseman about, you had a chance to bring in Wilson, and then he nixed the trade, and he says, "Yeah, we nixed it because he wanted to get paid before he'd even played in a football game." And then we said to Russ, "Well, we want to make these trades. We want to make a trade for A.J. Brown also in this offseason so we can get you some help in addition to that. We want to make some signings to get this done. What about that too in addition to that? That will be interesting to hear if that's what does play out in the way. But that would be my very strong guess, is that they would say, "We're not going to pay you having never played the position." And the Walmart money was like, we'll pay you. We don't care. What's it to us? And so, I think that was probably why it got nixed. Because think of why that team was just on the offensive line standpoint and being able to just go out there and not get beat up. They had a really good offensive line great offensive line at that time. No matter where the team was at, Russell could look at that line and look at the Denver line and look at that line and look at the Denver line. And one of these things is not like the other. And it's a very huge difference. One's great all the way down the line, pass protection, run blocking. The other cannot pass protect for its life. And yet you chose that other spot.
Yeah. Philly made the playoffs in a rebuilding year.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually very impressive. We forget about that now, but Philly made the playoffs the year before, and Denver was bad, as they had been for quite some time. I don't know. The whole thing is just very weird, but that's kind of my theory too. The only other thing I can think of is that he didn't want to be in Philadelphia. He thought Denver would be a better place to build his brand or something. Maybe it's just like, I don't want to live in Philly.
Could be. Denver is an attractive spot in that respect. It had a little bit of the legacy with. I mean, that's where we come back to. As much as that could be, the money part of it feels a little more on the button for what the reasoning probably really was here. Mm-hmm. And that, because that's what so many people lamented about Denver and doing it. You're going to pay this guy before he's even stepped on the field for you. You never, like with Jamal, we made the trade of Jamal, and then he played for us for a year, then we paid him. Maybe that was a bad contract, maybe that's a bad trade, but you can just bring him in and be like, "Here's the check, and we'll give up the first round picks, and there's your $45 million guaranteed." No, you're not going to do that. But that one's going to sting for Russ probably long term. Think about that one in retrospect, because that would have gone an entirely different. Let me ask you this: What happens if Russ goes to the Eagles last year?
Well, they almost won the Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts. Now, granted, they did almost make the Super Bowl because while Jalen Hurts is a limited quarterback, he was able to do things that Wilson can't do,
Mm-hmm.
like basically play fullback. Um, well, maybe that's another reason why it didn't happen because they ran the ball so much. Maybe he was aware that Philly was trying to implement if they had Wilson, though, do they change that? Do they open it up a little bit more because they have a quarterback with a better arm? I feel like they're still probably either in the Super Bowl or very close to it because that team is loaded. Like, I'm not a huge Jalen Hurts guy. I don't think Jalen Hurts is all that, but they got to the Super Bowl with him. So even if I think Wilson is kind of shot, I think they still could have pretty much gone that far with Wilson. So
Yeah.
I'm going to say not too much changes. I think they would have been really good.
Yeah, I think that team was as loaded as they were from a talent standpoint, where it wasn't really as much quarterback driven. The hard part about it does come down to the part you point out to, though, where they ran a lot of that read option stuff, and you just weren't going to do that with Wilson if you brought him in. So do they make the changes or not? Who knows on that part if they were willing to do that? And then do they have an offense that can still be as prolific at that point as it was last year, running it differently than how they ran it? And I like you think that at the very least he's going to have a lot more probably success than he had last year with Denver. That would be undoubted. Don't know if he'd take it as far as Hurts because Hurts ran everything so good. And you mentioned the fullback plays on the 3rd and 4th and 1s. Like Russ's bread and butter was never doing quarterback keepers. I don't know if a 34-year-old Russ likes the thought of two guys pushing him in the back like a like a freaking flesh battering ram through a line at 34 years old. I don't know if he would have signed up for that one either.
Yeah. I mean, even in Wilson's current state, they get something back though.
Yeah. He'd be better than he was with Denver. I wouldn't argue. And maybe a potential to get him to the Super Bowl. I wouldn't say it's out of line. Say that there's no way. It possibly could happen. It could go that way I could see it. Kevin Lownice, thank you for the $20 donation. I do appreciate you on that, Kevin. He says, I believe Flowers led the nation in the return game. I'm going to be keeping my eyes on him too. Okay, we got some return help coming in.
Oh, yeah, that's the one thing I did read about him. I guess he has the NCAA record for return touchdowns or something, but
okay.
You can't just make a roster as a return man these days. The days of that are gone. You got to do something else.
Yeah, I think you would still have Ugabuki on the roster right now if just having the team was still willing to just have a guy who was just a returner. Maybe on the practice squad, he's got a chance to kind of make it if he goes out and flashes out for that, where they think, let's just have that in reserve if we do need to call upon it. But I'll be watching him now too, Kevin. Thank you for the note on that. You guys on that, letting us know about that guy. I'll be keeping a little bit of a closer eye on him too. I like what I saw from Tyjon Lindsey. I'll tell you that last week in the punt return game, and I wouldn't mind seeing more of that. I mean, he looked like a pretty good punt returner as advertised in the open field with some of his moves and quickness. But Kevin, thank you for the $20 donation, and we'll keep an eye out. We'll see what he looks like here. DJ Owen, thank you for the $10 donation. He says, I see the Eagles losing at least 2 more games from their record last season because of the coaches. They lost. Who do you think? Plus, I think they lost. What do you think? Sorry. What do you think? Plus, I think hope we beat them at home. I put my money on that bet. That's a strong bet to be making at this point.
Yeah. I don't feel like Philly lost that much. They lost Javon Hargrave, and they were able to keep Lane Johnson. They lost Miles Sanders, but actually, it sounds like they're hot to trot on the Jonathan Taylor thing now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to fix their running back problems ASAP, yeah, go get Jonathan Taylor. I don't feel like they lost that much. And I feel like that division was really good last year. It's probably going to be a little worse this year because Washington will be uncompetitive. The Giants could fall off after being shockingly good last year. I don't know. I don't think they lose much.
Yeah, DJ, unfortunately, I'd love to give you a little more a hype for your pick on that. Eagles are the team that I have representing this, again, going back to the Super Bowl this year. Brendan touched on a lot of the reasons that are there. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was a guy they did lose. That's another one that does hurt a little bit. But the offensive line's still in place. Devonta Smith and AJ Brown are still there on the outside. Dallas Goedert's still your tight end there. And all those guys are still young and should still be really good. I do believe that they're probably, in my opinion, if I'm laying betting money down, Brendan, and you asked me if the teams out there that would go out there and make the Taylor trade and eventually gets done, I think they would be my front runner to go make that kind of trade because Roseman is aggressive and he will stay on top of this kind of deal and try to find a way to make it in a way that other general managers, I think, would bail off and give up at a certain point when it gets kind of sticky and tough. But let's just say absent that, you got Jalen Carter, who I think is going to, and is shown in the preseason, he's going to give you some immediate impact, most likely. Nolan Smith, they didn't lose anything off the edge. I mean, they lost Hargrave, so Carter's got to fill in on that. But then you have Nolan Smith coming off the edge as whatever he provides as a rotational guy behind, Hassan Reddick. Sidney Brown then takes over for Chauncey Gardner. And they even had a better draft beyond that. They had it, like, the whole draft was so strong from the Eagles to me throughout. And I think it's going to be not only good for them in the long term, but they're going to get the immediate returns on that draft this year too, which will help them maybe not be better than last year, but at least maintain, in my opinion, DJ, that line that they were at.
Yeah, and also think about the games they lost last year. They lose to that game to Washington. That was a really weird game. Came down to the wire, came down to basically an accidental face mask call deciding the game. And then they lost 2 games in a row at the end of the season with Gardner Minshew. They lost by, like, in the last seconds to Dallas with Minshew. And then they lost a game to the Saints they basically punted on because they played most of their backups, I think. So when you think about the way they lost games last year, I don't see it. I do not see it right now.
Yeah, I can't get there either on that one, DJ. I'd like to say I would, because I would like to not see him as strong, and we'd be able to look at him and say, we'll get right by them if we had to play him. But I think they put together a really good team. Roseman's he's getting his praise, and he should get his praise for the way he's put this team together. And if you go back pick by pick through that draft that they have and look at every one of those selections, much like ours, you can see the value-based aspect of it. And that's a big part of the way Roseman runs his drafts. And that bears out. That bears out the fruits. We'll see if Georgia East can get it done out there. But yeah, I think they are going to be the best team out there in the NFC this year. Cowboys, to me, we'll see where they are. I think you're right about everything being kind of marginally back a little bit from what they were last year in that division. Maybe not big steps back, but at least little half steps back, quasi steps back, if you will. Well, we got to thank you for all the donations, you guys, on that too. Appreciate all of you guys on that support tonight. Do me a favor as well. A couple little items on this. Hit that like button if you could for me. Helps out this video, helps us show up on the algorithm as far as for other Seahawks fans. So if you can do that, thank you very much in that respect of things. Also, head on over to Seahawks Brendan Nelson's channel, as you can get subbed up over him, and he's doing daily, sometimes multiple videos a day over there covering the Seahawks with the daily news item. Got one baseball question for you with the Shohei Ohtani deal as we start to finish up here a little bit, Brendan. And he has the UCL now, the Tommy John surgery that he's had successfully, a guy that people are looking about, maybe a Mariner target. I'm all in on going for this guy still. I would love to try to recruit him as just being maybe a hitter. We don't really need him as much for the pitching stuff.
Absolutely.
Were you still in on Ohtani?
Oh, yeah. And, there are a few different reasons why. Even with this injury, like, who else are you going to get? Who else is going to be available this offseason? Like, you can always trade for somebody, maybe, but sometimes there's a reason why they're available in a trade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need his pitching. Like you said, we need his hitting. This probably knocked his price tag down by 9 figures, right?
Probably. I would say there's a couple $100 million coming off the top on that one now.
Yeah, so to me, it's still a no-brainer. I don't even think you can consider getting scared off by this.
No, and we'll see how this injury maybe impacts him on the open market. But the Mariners have been playing really good baseball, so this is still not a situation we have to look at necessarily 100% right now. But I hope they make a run at him, and certainly at this point wouldn't dissuade me from going there. Hopefully the Mariners can stay hot here, though. It's been good to see them cooking along like they have here and getting things back, man. It's a really resilient crew out there.
Yeah, agreed.
Fat Daddy Stacks with a double dono says Malik Flowers has good size, good hands, and a 4.46 40 time. Definitely could be an asset. Yes, small school at Montana, but dominant. Diamond in the rough, maybe, on that.
Yeah. Even with the injuries, it's just hard to crack this wide receiver depth chart, though.
That's the thing with this is if Fat Daddy, if he's going to make any hay here with this team, probably he's going to have to make it in this first 6 weeks where there is the opening with maybe no Derek, no JSN, maybe for a couple weeks, no Eskridge, and that maybe he can jump forward on there. If he comes out and has a really good game here and maybe forces the coach's hand on that to be that guy. We do think right now it's going to go, let's just say JSN's back by week 2. So we don't have to look at through week 1, but you got Lockett, DK, JSN, no Derek, no Eskridge, so you're going to have Bobo. So that leaves one other spot. Who's that guy? Obviously, I think with you're intimating here, Fat Daddy, that he would go into the practice squad, being Malik, and that they would have him there, which they probably could. But we got still have Jacob Eason, Winston, Easop
Winston, Landers, Cody Thompson. You got. It's still tough to crack even that room.
Yeah. And I think back 20 years ago, Fat Daddy, with the whole special teams thing, you can kind of do that a little bit, I think, in prior times, but I think teams really lean away from that now. I think Seattle just did last year because they weren't getting anything from the punt return game and DJ Dallas wasn't healthy. So you kind of had to, I think, start getting a little bit creative in your approach to filling out the roles on the team last year when it came to that. I don't think they'd go down that road again, though, especially with, again, where the talent is having as good a receiver room as you do have. But I'll promise you this, Fat Daddy, on your recommendation, man, I'll definitely be watching him. My eyes will be going to him, seeing how he's doing coming off the line and catching the ball and running his routes. And if he looks good, I'll definitely note it, as we go forward. So small school guys, I'm not anti-small school guys, man. I don't care if they're small school, large school. And I think I'm either way. Either way.
It can happen.
They can happen. All right. Well, we will go ahead and I think just about hour 40, and it's a good time to probably wrap it up here. Brendan and I will be back next Tuesday. We're broadcasting from both channels, so we'll be on both sides of the end of the scale on that, of course. But we'll be back 7:00 at that time, doing a little bit of a post game breakdown as far as this past upcoming Saturday game goes. But then other than that, we'll just be looking forward to the upcoming season, get a prediction show after that and whatnot. So a couple things planned as we lined up going to the future on this, but we're getting close, Brendan. We're only a mere 15 days away.
Yep, we are right about there.
I want to thank all the folks that did donate, Fat Daddy Stacks, DJ Owen, and everyone else out there. Thank you for all the donos. Taker 610, Kevin Lonice. Appreciate you guys for that. Very kind of you. Again, get over to Seahawks, Brendan Nelson. Sub up over there to his channel. And sub over here as well if you haven't hit that like button. We will be back on Tuesday. We're about to go into this third preseason game. Your Seattle Seahawks are laying groundwork. They're stacking those bricks bit by bit through this preseason, on top of having a strong offseason, on top of having strong mini camps and a strong training camp and everything really looking good, like you'd ideally like it to see. So we're just one more step closer with this preseason game. Let's see if they continue to build another brick on top, another team-centric win brick on top of the rest, to turn ourselves in just the right fashion towards this upcoming season, get this energy all built up in the right way, that ball already rolling, Brendan, that momentum going, momentum in football, whether it be in a game or whether it be a season, or it's such an important thing to get that feeling and that thing. We're going forward. We're confident. We're feeling good about it. So you should feel confident. Hopefully they give us a good game this upcoming week, Brendan. But beyond that, I hope they don't forget. Do you think they're going to forget it? We're not back for 4 days. They're probably going to forget.
Yeah, I mean, life's busy. Life is busy.
It is. They've got busy. They got stuff going on. They get it. I guess we probably should remind them then. I think we probably should let them know. So folks, do not ever forget. We're back in 4 days, but in that time, don't you ever forget, especially when you're going into the Lambeau. Put on your game faces, folks. This has been a tough area for us. I don't care if it's preseason. It's always regular season when it comes to our Hawks. Every week is a championship opportunity. So don't you ever, ever forget. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.